Hello
Hey
and
everyone.
hello and welcome. Truly appreciate your time today, and let's jump right in and have a little poll question to start us out while I introduce our speaker. So hopefully a poll question should be popping up on your screen. And poll question should say, digital watches are considered to be the first wearable. What year was the first digital watch produced? Do you think it was 1970, 72, 4, 6, or 8? Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Morin, Chief Sales Officer for Software Development Corporation. I'm excited to be your host today as we pick the topic that has generated hundreds of registrations from individuals all around the world. And I've been watching the attendees as they've already started joining us today. And I see some of our customers. I see some companies that we're already in communication with. However, I see many, many others that I'm anxious to learn more about your interest in the wearables market. For those that do not know anything about Softeq and our speaker, Chris Howard is our CEO, and he started Softeq 28 years ago, helping customers bring products and applications to life. We've helped companies in the wearable space from ideation to design to prototyping and all the way to production. We thrive on the new, never been done before, and have completed thousands of successful projects with our customers from all around the world. Chris Howard has been hands-on from day one and continues to be involved today. His electrical engineering, business, and venture background make him a very credible speaker to learn from on the topic of building wearables. Before turning it over to Chris, please feel free to start entering any questions that we can answer at the end of our time today. And if we don't get to every question that's been submitted, we'll reach back out to you. So let's take a look at the first poll. Nobody picked 1970. 42% of you picked 72, 28, 74, 1476, and 1478.
You might want to
72
let it
is
stay up there a little longer before you tell them the answer. So
there
let
you
them,
go.
or go ahead.
There you go. Well, it was 1972. And
Yeah.
so it looks like a lot of you know that already. It's jumped up to 50%. And it was the Pulsar watch by the Hamilton Watch Company. So without further ado, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Chris. Um, and he's going to take us through a journey of the history, present, and future trends in the wearable technology. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I have a pretty extensive watch collection. Most of them are cheap watches and just gadgets. I don't have the Hamilton watch. I'm gonna have to try to find that one. But I do have this Nixie tube watch. That's pretty cool. You do have to push the button in order for the Nixie tube to actually light up, and that's exactly what the Pulsar watch did back in the day. So like Greg said, I started Softeq over 3 decades ago now. It's an old man, but with the focus on creating innovative products and what I call technical software, which is why I called the company Softeq. I was not interested in just doing SAP or database or website development. So just wanted to do the things that had never been done before. And over that time, we've had the opportunity to work with innovative entrepreneurs at the Fortune 500, working on creating something new, as well as innovative entrepreneurs at many, many different startups. And so our full stack approach of hardware, firmware, mobile, web backend, AI, ML, and data analytics has given us a front row seat on some cool projects. And wearables have certainly come a long way since I started this. And I'm excited to take a look back at where we've been and gaze into the crystal ball and see where we're going. So let's take a journey through the history, the current innovations, challenges, and future trends in wearable technology. Let's go ahead and start another poll question. We'll let it run while I'm talking. We find these to be the most common commercial wearable markets. So the poll is just share what you have. What market do you think is the most interesting or most interested you are the most interested in today, and that poll should pop up for you. If it doesn't, there's a poll button over on your right that you can click on and see the polls that are out there right now. So looking back, birth of digital watch wearables, like the Pulsar digital watch. That was the first one out there, and 1972, as Greg mentioned, and it was a push button and just a display, and all it did was display the time. And after that was the HP calculator watch. I remember those, in case I didn't look like more than the geek I already was. Having a calculator on your wrist was a cool thing, at least for us geeks back then. Seiko TV watch, we finally got to the point where we had Dick Tracy, although it was one-way communication. Not like today where you actually do have an Apple Watch that can do something like that. And then Bluetooth. Everyone knows Bluetooth started in 1999. They're on Bluetooth 5 or whatever now. Works pretty good, still sometimes frustrating. But this really spurred the development of wearables and connected devices. Next. So some of the early wearable trends is miniaturization. How do we make something small enough to go on somebody's wrist? Battery technology, right? How do we power that thing for more than a few hours or even a day? Still a challenge right now. The Apple Watches, they last, I think, 2 days at the most. Functionality, integration, multiple features, combining them into a single device. Watches today don't just tell the time, right? And we'll get into a little bit more as we go in through the webinar. And then material innovation. Back then we had plastics and metal, and that was about it. And there's just a lot more materials available now with durability and comfort, which makes wearables, better suited for the technological advances of today. So speaking of which, the modern wearables are like the Fitbit. I had one of the first original Fitbits. It was a belt wearable clip, and all it did was it was just a connected pedometer, right? Nowadays, it has a whole host of features included in the device. I think that now a Fitbit has, 7 or 8 different sensors in it, from accelerometers to heart sensors to stress sensors to ECG sensors, and they cram it all into a very small package. Of course, everyone knows the Apple Watch. I've got the Apple 10 on right here. It's got a number of sensors and innovations that they've added over the years. Everything from a heart sensor to temperature and compass and altimeters and accelerometers. The only one thing the Apple Watch 10 doesn't have is a blood oxygen sensor, pulse ox, which is one of the dings on the watch. Otherwise, it's a fantastic device. And then the Aura Ring. I've got one on also today. It has 15 advanced sensors crammed into such a small package. If you think about this thing, they've got a battery crammed in there. It's inductive charging. They've got 15 advanced sensors. And then on top of that, they had to create, I don't know, a dozen different sizes for this ring, for the different finger sizes. And then each charging station is also a different size. I think that's a little bit nuts. But considering the fact, how much small space they have in this, they also got a week-long battery life out of this thing. I've been wearing this for about a year now. So I can attest to the fact that it does last that long. And then I mentioned the level CGM, and I wanted to mention this one besides the fact that I coincidentally happen to be wearing all 4 of these devices and do regularly wear them. The CGM used to be only available to people that were diabetic. Now, though, you can, through a number of different startups, get a CGM patch and start monitoring your blood glucose level and using that to influence your diet and your health and your fitness. So it's really, really interesting how things have come along in the last 15, 20 years. Next slide. And then feature-wise, right? I mean, if you think about the Aura, you don't know which one of these rings is the Aura ring, right? It's this one, but this one is a ring that has I think it's a hardened diamond ring with a meteorite in it. Does nothing. It's just decorative. This one is the one that gives me all of my information. So some of the things that we were involved with, just picked a few of them here. Certainly, with 3 decades to choose from, we've done a lot. Uh, One of our first hardware projects was for Disney. It was the Ears of the World. Compaq was one of our clients, and Disney came to Compaq, and um, Compaq said, "Well, why don't you use Softeq for that?" We had never done a hardware project before at that point. My background's electrical engineering. We work with a lot of hardware companies, um, running firmware and software, for HP and Epson and many others, AMD, etc. So they thought, well, maybe we can create this headset for me that's for assisted technology. And so it was designed for low hearing or deaf or low sight or blind people to be able to experience the Disney park like they could, like you and I could, or at least as close as possible to that. So it had to be very durable. It had to be on the head. There's a lot of testing involved. There's drop testing. Theme parks tend to be shredders for technology if you think about it, because they've got rain, humidity, heat, sunlight, sunscreen, all day battery life. You're dropping it on the ground, and you need to have that ruggedness and durability. Um, we took the project on, delivered it start to finish, 5,000 headsets and 200 battery chargers in 6 months, and that included the prototyping, manufacturing, certifications. Disney, wanted on body testing, right? Because they didn't want to give their guests brain cancer for some reason. So we did all of that, and at the end, Disney said, "Wow, that's one of our most successful projects we've ever done. We haven't seen anyone do a project, hardware development that fast and actually deliver." We went on and developed the Duratech handheld. Actually, I have one of them here. And if you think about the fact that this was 10, 12 years ago, this was a rugged device back when simple devices were huge, right? That was what rugged meant. But we took a compact iPack and disassembled it, created our own ruggedized IP67 case, and then reassembled it into a durable package and created the first ruggedized iPack. And now it's installed at over 50 national parks worldwide. We licensed it back, and we've been installing it at places like, the Grand Canyon and Death Valley and Mount Vernon and a host of others. This was also, and I'll get into that, how do we rapidly prototype this? In fact, this particular product we only had to deliver 200 units of this. So if you think about having to develop a very highly complex handheld, we used the Compact as a base, but then we added a daughter card that also did FM tuning. It did amplified audio. It did infrared transmission and reception. And but we didn't have to, start from scratch. Phosphor watches, I bring it up just because, that particular project, when you think about battery life, this vendor wanted to have the first watch that would last for 1 year. It's a digital watch. It had some really cool features. A 1 year battery life, and they were having, we can imagine, some struggles to get that done. We came in and we helped them out, and we actually did deliver it. And I remember one of my engineers, where there was like a one week delay on that project for getting hardware, because we had our developers overseas. And so he took the week and he spent the week writing an emulator for the watch so that we could continue to develop. I thought that was above and beyond, but that's how we like to do things at Softeq. And then finally, the Halo collar. There's an example of that here. Halo came to us when it was a couple of brothers that had a great idea, of how do they keep the family dog safe, and they wanted to create $1,000 dog collar with a monthly subscription. And it sounds crazy, but when you think about the ROI, it made a lot of sense, because the alternatives of fences and invisible fences are more expensive and also don't work so well. Your dog go over or under the fence or through the invisible fence and get out of your yard. And then on top of that, you don't know where it is. But you can also not take your fence with you, and you can with the Halo collar. Fast forward, they sold hundreds of thousands of collars. Now they're the number one connected pet tech product. They just won a Pet Tech Innovation Award in 2024. They've got a great hardware partner. I think the same factory builds iPhones and things like that. But we've helped them with the firmware and the mobile app and the web backend. And this is something I want to underscore. There's a lot of mobile developers out there, but if they don't understand hardware, they don't really, understand how do you take an app and only talk to your dog collar when there's hundreds of thousands of dog collars, out there, right? So I always felt that a better understanding of the hardware made you a better software developer. So talking about some of the challenges, I just mentioned Halo, by the way. I want to say that that Halo collar, it's got LTE, it's got Wi-Fi, it's got Bluetooth, it's got GPS, it's got durability, it's got all-day battery life, it's IP67. I mean, there's just a whole host of things that have to go in that collar. We are going to be at Embedded World in a couple of weeks, so and we're giving away one of these collars in a raffle. So if you're in Austin and you're at Embedded World, stop by the booth and enter to win. So challenges, I mentioned battery life. This is always a challenge and it continue to be a challenge because what happens is, we keep adding more and more features, right? The watch just doesn't tell the time anymore. It's got 15 sensors in it. And so every time you figure out how to do a little bit better on the battery, you add features and you're still, at that, 1 day battery life. Miniaturization, look at that Oura ring. That's the Oura ring over on the right. Just an amazing piece of technology, right? All packed into a very small form factor. Those are the things you have to consider. No one wants to wear a big, bulky wearable on their wrist. Other things like user experience. How do you interact with the device? How do you make it durable? How do you factor in regulatory compliances? How do you, make sure, like I said, you don't give someone brain cancer, you don't, cause issues with their health instead of trying to help them, right? And cost-effective manufacturing. How do you get these things done to where they're not, costing $2,000 and then no one's going to buy it? So next one, backup one. Oh, no, sorry, prototyping. So that's the Disney headset that we created. And at the time, of course, there was a lot of concept designs that we had to think of. We weren't sure, and they weren't sure whether they wanted a headset or did they want a belt clip or something like that. In fact, I even took some modeling clay myself. This is actually it. This is probably 15 years old. I actually modeled this myself with some modeling clay, even painted it up, try to show the belt clip in the charging station as a way to give, Disney, the idea was to put this like in hardened rubber and make it very durable. And you clip it on the belt and then you've got the earphones. We also thought about like a lightweight headset, right? But the issue was wanted the durability and they didn't want it small and they didn't want it to be broken because they're going to pass these things out every single day, right? So they're okay having them bigger. And then they need to be cleanable and the ear pads had to be replaceable and they had to be adjustable. So there's a lot of things that go into figuring out what the device should look like. And once we settled on the headset design, we went ahead and actually got it rapidly made. I think we made 2 of them using the CAD CAM models and soft plastics so that when we went to Disney to show them, they could actually feel it in their hands. It wasn't the durable version yet, but they could see how it worked. And it was amazingly fairly close to what the final product ended up to be. Nowadays, you also have 3D printing. Well, even back then, like with the Duratec, there were 3D printers. There's certainly a lot better ones now. This one actually was, I printed out this iPad, this Duratec device. And, I had a meeting with Starbucks trying to, sell them on the idea of doing line busting their Duratec. Funny story back then, I'm in the meeting and they, Starbucks is like, well, our back end runs on DOS, right? So that was a little bit of a shocker. But this was created out of full color 3D printing, basically sand, almost like an inkjet printer. Nowadays, you have even more options. I interviewed a guy recently has a company that does 3D printing for production parts. And with 3D printing, you can actually create parts that you just can't create with traditional printing. So 3D printing is coming to be not just something that's just like a fragile demo kind of thing, but parts that they actually use in products. And from what he was telling me, it was actually pretty cost effective because it meant that you could print them here in the US and you don't have to have all the supply chain issues and all the shipping delays and all the shipping problems that can occur. And so when you factor in all of that to your ROI, it actually becomes cheaper to just 3D print. Integration, how do you get those, the circuits and the sensors all fitted into like a printed prototype? Similarly, when I had the Duratec, I created one mock-up of these and we used like a silicon mold to create the plastics and actually managed to do the whole rubber overmold and everything. I remember taking that prototype to CES and showing it around to people and just thinking in my head every time I handed it to them and told them that it was a rugged device, is like, please please don't drop it. I only have one of those, and it costs like $3,000, right? And so, but we've come away since then. And then iterative testing. I mean, it's important in software. It's even more important in hardware, right? You keep testing, because once you get to production, things can be pretty difficult to change. So hardware platforms, you don't have to greenfield stuff from scratch. There's so much available now. Arduino has a nano platform for at least proof of concept and MVP development and sometimes production. Adafruit has their Feather platform. Particle IO, they've got their argon and boron platforms for IoT and connectivity. SparkFun as well. And there's probably dozens of these. I just highlighted a few of them. The point is, you can rapidly prototype a POC or an MVP using the existing platform, and then you work on how do we manufacture it, how do we make it smaller. But if you want to do testing, you want your concept, can we actually do what needs to be done? It makes a lot of sense to use these platforms. Um, so the checklist, right? We talked a lot about these before. Concept to design, very important. Hardware selection. What are you going to base your hardware on? Arduino now has an Arduino Pro line, for example. So, instead of prototyping on Arduino and then moving to something else, you can actually then continue on to an Arduino Pro line and not have to redo all your initial code. Software development, certainly firmware, apps, etc., cloud infrastructure. I mean, there's a lot that goes behind a device that has to be managed on the cloud, as you can imagine. That's where all the user accounts are. That's where all the notifications come from. Testing and compliance. There's UL, FCC, CE, etc. Very important to pick the right partner, and then understand that you have to have some products built, and sometimes to a point to where they're going to take them into testing. You can't test a prototype. They won't sign off on it because they're like, well, that's not the case. You've got different plastics, you've got different hardware. We're not going to put it into the chamber and test it and see whether it's emitting radiation until you actually have a product done, and that's going to delay some of your launch. Speaking of launch, marketing and launch, that's something you definitely need to think about. Something that's skipped on a lot of startup founders. And then post-launch support. I've seen this where people create products and put them out into the world, whether it's a wearable or an IoT device, and they haven't figured out, well, how are we going to update the firmware so that once we have 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000 of these in the field, how are we going to update it remotely and not brick the device? You really have to think that through and have a bootloader and have a plan and we have that set up ahead of time. So AI and wearables. So this is where we get to the future stuff, and this is where things are going to get pretty cool, right? I mean, up until now, yeah, I've got my Oura Ring on, my Apple Watch on, my Fitbit on, my CGM on. It's giving me a lot of data. Right now, they're fairly dumb, right? They're starting to add on some AI, but it's kind of like, oh, great, I've got this level of weight, I've got this level of pulse ox, and this level of glucose. So what? What do I need to do? What do I need to change? This is where AI is going to come in and help me figure that out based on goals that I tell it. You're also going to get a lot of personalization. This is also helping in general care. But the devices right now, they don't really know whether half the time they don't even know whether you're a man or a woman. But they need to be calibrated and can be calibrated and be specialized to be about you. Improved user interfaces. I mean, when you think about natural language processing and things like that, you can just talk to your device. You don't need to know how to be you don't have to use a UI, something like that. You can have a lot more intuitive control. Early disease detection. This is going to be something that, I think is going to improve the health of everyone. I mean, there's going to be a time when you go to the restroom and it's going to say something like, congratulations, you're pregnant, or, you might want to go see the doctor. Your XYZ is high, or there's an indicator that should be at 10 and it's at 1200, and so that might be a leading indicator of a health problem, right? And then, context-aware applications. You're going to have apps and devices that are going to be, changing their behavior based on what context they're in at the time. So it's I think exciting next 10 years to see this all come together. And speaking of AI, I mean, a lot of times with these devices, you don't necessarily have the connectivity. And so a lot of innovation is going into what can you do at the edge? And all that is what can you do on the device, right? So you can't run Chat GPT on the device unless it's connected to the cloud. And good news is there are platforms for this, like TensorFlow Lite for microcontrollers, Impulse, ideal for AI applications and activity recognition and audio classification and things like that. Qualcomm has an AI engine. It's like your Snapdragon Wear platforms, and they have all kinds of capabilities suitable for advanced AI applications and healthcare diagnostics and predictive analytics and natural language processing. And then NVIDIA, of course, everyone's familiar with NVIDIA. NVIDIA has a Jetson Nano platform. Although it's primarily used for more powerful devices, it can be integrated into certain large-scale wearable systems for AI processing, things like image recognition and a machine learning inference. But, AR glasses and AI-assisted fitness trackers would be something that you would use for that. Key considerations when you're trying to integrate edge AI. Well, guess what? AI takes battery life, right? So you got to factor in that AI computations require power, and so efficient models and chips with a low power consumption are critical. Latency is an issue. Processing, data looking for real-time applications. Security and privacy. This is all very, very important. Sensitive health and fitness information. You don't want that getting out. And then model optimization. You need to be able to optimize AI models with the constraints of a wearable device. Right? Okay, next slide. So a few slides on what's coming up. What do we see in the next 20 years? Well, like I mentioned earlier, enhanced personalization, right? So this is going to be something that's going to be, I think, pretty revolutionary. Highly customized experiences with health insights, right? Seamless integration. I mean, wearables are becoming more integrated with daily life and fashion. Like I mentioned before, I mean, which one is the smart ring? It looks exactly the same, right? You're going to see more and more of that. Advanced health monitoring devices to provide early detection, right? Continuous health management. My doctor is usually amazed when I go in. I can tell him, in fact, when I went there, at one point he's like, I think we need to be put on, pre-diabetes medication. I'm like, well, hold up, let me see what I can do about that. So I got I used a connected glucose monitor that was a startup that I invested in. Started, registering my glucose and started recording weight and changing my diet and fitness. And then behold, 6 months later, my A1C was down. And if you think about it, going to an annual exam and getting a single data point, and then the doctor who just saw your chart on the door 3 minutes before he came into the room, I mean, he doesn't know anything. And maybe you just, I don't know, shouldn't have had that third glass of wine before you went to your physical checkup. And now you're on medication that you don't really need to be on. And when I can pull up my app and show 8 years of history about my blood pressure and my weight and my glucose and whatever, it's impactful. And then augmented reality. I mean, wearables incorporating AR for enhanced information. I mean, Google Glass was an early adopter. I was one of those glass holes back then, tried out the technology. But, you see with Facebook, they've got Ray-Bans. It's cool, right? You don't have the ugly tax of having to drive a Prius if you're trying to be energy conscious, right? You can drive a Tesla now. You can have Ray-Bans. Although they won't let me have the Ray-Bans because my prescription is too bad. So apparently my prescription will make their Ray-Bans look bad. So I'm still a geek. Of course, if this was 20 years ago, I'd probably have Coke bottle glasses on right now. But and some really cool things are coming out. I mean, you think about smart clothing and skin embedded sensors. I mean, it sounds like, sci-fi right now, but wearables are expected to be woven into fabrics. And so you have like a full body sensors. You just put on your clothes. You don't have to have some other device on or embedded right into your skin. I mean, if you had the choice right now of your Apple AirPod saying, well, what if we just put the AirPod in your ear it's going to power off of your body. You never have to, charge it again. Of course, a lot of people might be like, no, no way. I don't want to do that. I don't want to turn into the Borg. But, at some point you think about, well, now I've got this thing all the time. And now you pair that with something like ChatGPT, always available, and you can just speak to it. I mean, that stuff's what's going to start happening. Bioelectronic tattoos and implants. I don't have a tattoo. Maybe if it was bioelectric, maybe I'd be interested in getting a tattoo. I don't know. So brain computer interfaces, BCI. This stuff is happening right now. You see, neural startups. I think Elon Musk has one, and he's putting chips into people now, right? And being able to control things. I mean, you're going to have an option of having. At first, it's going to be people that really need it, right? Just like anything, just like the glucose sensor. But then at some point, it's going to be available to all of us if you want it. And then environmentally reactive. I mean, like I said, changing to the environment. I mean, one example of that would be, maybe, paint on a car. That's not a wearable, but if you had a wearable shirt and it was a smart shirt and I want to change the color of it, then, that's a wearable. And I'm certain that kind of thing will happen. Maybe not a shirt, maybe it'd be a jacket. I don't know. And then emotional and cognitive sensing. I mean, right now, the smart devices aren't very smart when it comes to reading emotions and cognitive states. So that's the stuff that's gonna happen. We are living in the future. We're getting close to the end here, so then make sure you ask your questions. There is a question icon over on the right. So if you have a question, type it in there, and then everyone on the webinar can upvote that question, right? And so we'll answer the ones that get the most votes first. So Softeq's role in wearable innovation, certainly our full stack expertise makes us suited for both wearables and IoT development. Like I said, everything from hardware and firmware all the way down to AI and data analytics. We have been creating cutting edge wearables for complex challenges for a long time, right? And then our user-centric approach of create designs based on user experiences and comfort, right? And then we collaborate with our partners. So we are in partners with the Googles and Amazons and Microsofts of the world, and then as well as the platforms like Arduino and NVIDIA, et cetera. So we're aware of what's possible on these devices, and we can make a good selection on where to start based on the requirements of the wearable. So join the wearable revolution. I mean, you look at all these domains here, and we'll look at the poll question. Maybe now's a good time to look at the poll question. Where did we end up on the commercial wearable markets? Looks like just a few votes, but health and med tech, those are the top votes. Okay, but every domain that we've listed here has a wearable application, right? Shameless plug for my podcast. I've done about 90 of these episodes talking to innovative entrepreneurs at both large and small companies. Had a really interesting conversation. I think hopefully it'll be out this week with a guy that's doing hydroponics. It's called Moonflower Farms. They're looking at how do we grow plants and flowers on the moon and on Mars, and they're actually also applying that technology down here on the ground. The team and I are going to go check out their farm on Friday and take a look at their platform and see how we can help them with that. And this is apparently what AI thinks I'll look like in the future. We're podcasting. I like the fact it looks like I'm gonna grow hair. So, and so that takes us to our Q&A. There was a joke from Elon. Elon most recently said he's like he was looking at his photos and the timeline. He said it's kind of interesting how becoming a billionaire, your hair starts to grow again. I'm pretty sure that's not. And I've got a long ways to go before I can figure out whether that's the case or not. Hey, Greg.
Chris. Hey, nice job. We do have some questions. So it looks like the first one, where do you see the biggest opportunities for the growth in embedded IoT development over the next few years?
Okay. Well, I mean, like wearables, I mean, IoT is still growing. I haven't seen the latest stats, but something like 20 to 30% year over year, because everything can be smart. If you think about devices now like Alexa, still not that smart, right? And so adding things like ChatGPT is going to make those devices more and more useful. But being able to connect data and analyze that data, what we're seeing, there was pushback many years ago. Hey, we've always done it with pencil and paper, but now with IoT devices, you're it's hard to pick just one industry, you know, that can be impactful. But IIoT for industrial applications, I think is probably one of the more opportunistic areas. That's where the most interest is, besides consumer connected devices and wearables.
Okay. Chris, the next
Should
one.
have.
What do you think the next advancement in wearable technology for visually impaired people could be? And what have you seen exciting in the visual accessibility space?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh, yeah. I mean, what I've seen recently, they're even figuring out how to reconnect the optical nerves. So um, that's pretty interesting. I've seen a lot with just having the um, just having the ability to know more about your environment and your space when you're moving around. With some of the features that we added to the Duratech device way back when was being able to do visual description for the blind as they're walking around. And at the time, that's like knowing where you are at with a GPS location and then having a pre-recorded message, right? I believe what's going to happen as a next step is you're going to be able to do that, but the sensors, the visual data, and the location data, they're going to be able to just tell you that without having just playing an MP3 file or something like that. So I think that's where things are going
Okay.
in this space.
Best choices for wireless comms from a wearable device in regards to battery life. Wi-Fi, LTE, BT, other. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was looking at okay, there it is. I don't know why it's flickering. Wow, it keeps going back to the old question. What are the best choices for wireless comms from a wearable device in regards to battery life, Wi-Fi, LTE, and BT? Well, it's really it's like a lot of these questions. Like it depends, right? You don't need to have all of them. Um, the Bluetooth has gotten a BLE, which is Bluetooth Low Energy. That's probably the least energy communication, but it's limited by distance, right? But a lot of chips have now been coming out where they've combined LTE and Wi-Fi, for example, to really reduce the amount of battery you need to use. And then also it's just becoming, if you're going to optimize battery life, you're going to have to think about how can you put some of your product to sleep at different points in time, right? Do you need all these sensors on always? You're indoors. That's a different. Maybe you switch to a different technology. You're not running the GPS, but you're using. You're turning off a lot of stuff because you don't need to do the tracking, for example. And it's that situational awareness that will extend your battery life. So, I can't say whether Wi-Fi, LTE, BT are, one's more efficient than the other. Wi-Fi always was, and LTE was, more power hungry, but they've really made a lot of innovations with LTE and BLE lately. And again, it just depends on how does the device need to communicate.
Yeah, Chris, let me share. We've even had a prospect here recently where we're looking to put two or three into a single device because of some of the challenges with location in this particular situation. So it's maybe
Mm-hmm.
not just one, sometimes it's multiples that may be required to pick things up. So,
Mm-hmm.
next one, what industry are we seeing more trends around wearable tech? I'll take this one, Chris, because we're seeing a lot around sports training as well as medical. But sports training from and I don't want to give it away from some of the confidential opportunities that we're working on, but we're seeing it in all kinds of variety of sports, and how they're using technology either on the individual, the athlete, or other, and or the technology that they use. So we're seeing it. We're seeing a big uptick in sports, and we've seen consistent in the medical side um, for that. So
Yeah, sports
um,
tech, first it goes to the athletes and performance, but then that trickles down to the rest of us, right? Who
yeah,
are not performing at that athletic peak, but you still want to understand what's going on. And I think you are going to see a lot more wearables in sports. We're seeing it. Yeah, there's some particularly interesting challenges there, because like, how do you get the athletes to wear them? Because they feel like it's like you know um, holding them back in their performance. They're not going to want to wear whatever it is you want to put on. Oh, we want to track you and we want to do these things, and they're like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
yeah. Also
But if it
putting it
helps them
into the
with their
equipment
performance,
that they use, but we're seeing it putting
mm,
it into some of the equipment that they use. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and that's
um,
smart pucks and smart balls and smart goals and smart things.
there you go.
Um, mhm.
Um, Chris, do you have an opinion about AI pin device types? People will ask
Mm.
more for such of these devices.
AI pin device types, like a wearable pin. Is that what I say? Yeah, I've seen some of those where they're trying to do like the Star Trek, tap and talk kind of thing. I think it's interesting. I think there was one recently that was trying to do like it was a wearable that then also projected on your hand for the display. And from what I saw, they're really struggling to find product market fit for that, because it was cool. I think they didn't listen to the Steve Jobs speech where you really need to come from a position of what problem are you solving for the user, and don't just invent cool technology and then try to sell it, right? And so the AI pins can be interesting. I mean, things that already have microphones are like the earbuds you wear or the glasses you have. So I mean, I could see where wearing a pin where you could interface with AI, and you've seen the ones where people wear cameras and stuff all the time. So if the pin actually was taking video and it's also listening and it's doing things, I think the issue with the pin is that unlike the ear, everything the pin tells you is just being told to everybody, in the room, right? Whereas I'd rather have the earbud that reminds me what that guy's name is that's walking up and acting like I know him, right? you want you want like, oh yeah, that's Greg from Softeq. You guys met 3 months ago, and he was mostly interested in wearable devices, and his wife's name is XYZ. And so that's the kind of thing that you want to augment, and you can see the difference. I don't know if anybody's not doing this. If you're not using ChatGPT already, you're way behind. But I don't even hardly Google stuff anymore. I mean, I just go and ask ChatGPT what my question is, and it's given me some really really great answers, and they're adding a verbal component to that and an audible component, and then eventually, yes, that's going to be something that you can just wear and talk and be your assistant. And then if it's personalized, like I said earlier, it's a personal pin. It's not just like right now when you ask Alexa, um, our granddaughter's trying to play the song that she's played 52,000 times, and for the 10th time that day, and she asks it to play a song, and it comes up with some rap hip hop, song that she's never played, and it's like that's where things are going to just get better and better.
Right. Well, Chris, we're
Okay.
wrapping up our time here.
All
I
right.
always watch. I always watch how many people start the webinar and how many people are on at the end, and only a couple of people dropped off here. So there must have been great value in what you delivered today. So for everyone on the call, we thank you for your time. We hope it's informative. Reach out to us. You can get to our website, softeq.com. There's ways to contact us. You can reach us by phone. You can say hello at softeq.com, and we'd be happy to to reach back out and answer any questions you have, and perhaps join in a project down the road. So thank you for your time investment with us. We really appreciate it. And we're going to do a post survey. If you could kindly give us some feedback, we'd also appreciate that. So thanks again. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.